Let me see. Let me check it for us. Just the sound. It looks a little blurry to me for some reason. Take a second. Assalamu alaikum.
Ji, walaikum salam.
Minahil, are you here? Let's see. I think we're still waiting for attendees. अच्छा जी, अस्सलाम वालेकुम.
Ji, walaikum
Dr.
salam.
Nadeem, are you good to begin? मैं थोड़ी सी introductions कर दूं for our program and then also briefly of you, and then we can start with your
जैसे आपकी
presentation.
as you wish. If you want to wait for a few minutes so others could join, it's your call.
जी, वो
I
the
am okay
attendees
to join.
are not showing right now, लेकिन as I understand it, वो काफी join हो गए हैं. So during question and answer time, I think we'll get a better sense. क्योंकि वो attendees are all lumped into one category. So I think thank you so much again for making time for this. And just by way of introduction, this is an event of the Center for Chinese Legal Studies at the Sheikh Ahmed Hassan School of Law at LUMS. I'm the head of department of the law program, Uzair Kiani. And we are very pleased to have Dr. Nadeem Omar with us today to discuss a very, very critical aspect of the links between this part of the world and what is now China, which is the history of Chinese civilization that actually finds roots or expression in what is present-day Pakistan. And one of the leading contributions made by Dr. Umar has been to shed light particularly on the Buddhist heritage of many places in Pakistan. He works as an anthropologist. He's a visiting senior researcher at the University of Texas at Austin, and has done fellowships on related work all across the world. And he's also been senior faculty at the NCA and the University of Wa. He was one of the founding members of the Gandhara Trust, or the main effort to actually highlight the Gandhara and Buddhist civilizations in Pakistan. And we have had some events previously, including academic events, where a lot of Chinese scholars have shown particular interest in the Buddhist history of Pakistan and how that can be used. Now, if you compare that as an opportunity for tourism to other very well-known religious tourist destinations, be it Mecca, be it Jerusalem, be it the Vatican, we have a huge advantage in that China is our neighbor, and a lot of the main Buddhist countries are virtually our neighbor. So the costs are very low. So it's just so it seems like an ideal opportunity. And we would try to understand how feasible it is and also what kinds of obstacles we might face there, and just generally get a broader sense of why this place, why this country, and which places in it are of particular to people of the Buddhist faith, and also people generally who have a faith in religious study and anthropology and so forth, and how we might best preserve it and make it a win-win situation for all who care about this wonderful heritage. So with that, I'll turn to Dr. Nadeem, please.
Thank you, Uzair, for a detailed introduction and also introducing the topic that we are going to sort of engage in today. May I ask how long is this session?
It's for an hour is the time that we've allotted, but probably the last 10 or 15 minutes might be questions.
Yes.
Mhm.
Or if
Just
you're
to
if it's
quickly
longer.
add here, Uzair and Dr. Umar, this is Minahil Toor. I just wanted to quickly add here that this is a webinar format, so you won't be able to view the attendees, but the questions that will come in for us, we will be able to view those. And of course, then we'll let you know. And once we get to the
All
Q&A,
right.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Minahil.
just letting you know that you won't be able to view the number
All
of
right.
attendees because this is a webinar format.
Right. That is
Got
not
it.
a problem.
All right.
Right. After thanking Uzair, I must also thank, formally the Chinese Legal Studies Center, and especially Dr. Sikandar and, Minahil and Atia for actually making this happen. And I'm also grateful to my friend Professor Hassan Bashir for actually proposing this. Uh, you know,
Absolutely.
uh, Yes, thank you very much. Now, it's a very auspicious day. If I don't know if you have realized or not, that for one, we are going to talk about Buddhist tourism, and it is actually, the week in which the Visak celebration are going to be held in all across the world from 19 onwards, 1920, and in South Asia, it's happening on 24th. And the Visak day is the day the Buddha was born, gained enlightenment, and passed away, 8 years apart. So it is like it's like a Christmas for the Buddhist. So we are on a very auspicious day. And very interestingly, it's a great coincidence that 21st May 1951 was a day when this Pakistan-China diplomatic relations were formally, sort of initiated. So it is a day of the initiation of Sino-Pak relation. It is a day when the Vesak celebration are in full swing in the Buddhist world and also in the United Nations. So I feel really privileged and honored also to be speaking to the LUMS audience and also, I hope, to some Chinese ears. Uh, when I, come to think of Pakistan and China, it's a very paradoxical relation, to be honest. Think about Pakistan as a largest Islamic nation that came to be in 47, and it is part of this capitalist world. Then it went on to become part of this military alliances with the Western world to combat communism. And at the same time, from its very inception, it actually bonded with China, which is a communist country, which is officially atheist, right? And it's also, up against arms with this Western bloc of which Pakistan is a part. So this is actually very paradoxical, and we should not forget that Pakistan was also one of those very first countries, to recognize China right after it declared as a People Republic of China, right? And also, one of the probably only non-communist country to be actually operating flights from within China, right? So, in many ways, Pakistan within the broader Islamic world is an exception, had an exceptional relationship with China. It also then, did not create any border dispute with China and actually, kind of give away the part of the territory in northern Pakistan to China, right? So it settled all its disputes, and it actually started on a very, warm footing, if you like, right? Now, what is, and again, when we think about Buddhist tourism, it is very interesting that Pakistan has actually relegated being a Muslim country, its Buddhist heritage to the margins. So it had a state ownership. I'll talk about that. And so did China. China never encouraged religion, being officially an atheist communist country. And when we think of Karl Marx's famous statement that religion is the opiate of the masses, so a communist country did not do not encourage religious expressions, just because then it will actually then conflict with their state ideology, right? And for instance, in 1979, for the very first time, Chinese Muslims were allowed on a pilgrimage to Mecca, not before that. And on that same note, 2006 was the very first time when first Buddhist conference, if you like, the World Buddhist Forum was organized in China. So all of that drift toward Buddhism in China, and in a way the drift towards Buddhism in Pakistan, is almost happening at the same time, right? It is actually a newfound aspiration, because if when you would think of religion and diplomacy, we realize that in the post world war, all of these advocate of modernizations, like sociologist Talcott Parson had actually argued that religion will be relegated to a private sphere only. The public life will not have anything to do with the religion. So religion was considered outdated, and the scientific rationality will take over the religious mindset. But tragically, or good or bad, for reasons, this did not happen really. Religion actually reasserted itself and then played a very fundamental role in shaping today's world. The world of politics is actually now driven by religion, right? And from war on terror to the current crisis in Middle East, everything is played out in the realm of religion. So religion, for sociologists and anthropologists and historians, has actually become immensely important field to understand, not just theology, right? But also how it actually then kind of drives you in a certain way. Actually, then it aligns you in a certain way with people. So religion is something very important for the diplomats to understand. Religion is very important for the statesman and the policymaker to understand. And this dream of a secular world where religion will just be a private faith, I think, is no longer tenable, right? Now, as I said, if you think of, we'll talk about in detail what really happened in China, right? And why this particular emphasis on Buddhism emerged there. And we also understand the reason that why it happened here. Uh, this talk is actually then will be situated, given this context, it will be situated in the opportunities and challenges of this Buddhist tourism in Pakistan that is concentrated in Gandhara. And I will also talk about how this relationship with China that we have forged, and it has now been augmented by CPEC, this China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is a flagship program, as we all know, of the Belt and Road Initiative. So now, how we can take advantage of that? How we can leverage, China's sort of standing in the Buddhist world for Pakistan, and to promote Buddhist tourism in Pakistan, and to lift up the country, right? So, this is then, I would say, we need to kind of speculate more, and, kind of dream of a new world where this strategic partnership in infrastructure development will also lead to, creating a peaceful and a tolerant world. We need to move toward a more sort of harmonious world by using religion rather than trying to divide and, cut each other from all sides. These religious wars are dividing the societies and not really helping societies to come together as a harmonious whole, right? Now, I would now like to spend some time actually then giving you a very brief history of Buddhism in China, right? Now, as you would all know, that Buddhism actually had a very long history in China, probably, slightly younger than in India and Pakistan, in ancient Pakistan, but of course, like 2000 years old history. And it all started, when Buddhism, which has actually flourished in Gandhara, and I'll talk about more why it flourished in Gandhara. It actually then traveled from the Silk Route to China. So this particular, this particular, entry of Buddhism in China through Gandhara, which was actually situated on the crossroad of the Silk Route, right? And it was had an intermediary presence, where there's lot of these trades and goods were, sort of traveling through Gandhara. And one must understand that on the roads, not only on the ancient roads only the traders travel, but also the religious people also travel. The monks also traveled, from ancient Pakistan to China and introduced Buddhism in China. So there is another very important, kind of ancestral, link between Pakistan and China that Chinese understand very well, right? And so, from the second century BCE, from the Han Dynasty, this particular, transportation and the travel of Buddhism to China took place, and then these early translators of Sanskrit text into Chinese were also people from Gandhara. Lokak Sima is a very important figure in Buddhist history of China, who had translated actually the fundamental scripture in second century CE of Buddhism in Chinese languages, right? And then the following periods, also then saw this rapid, consolidation of Buddhism in China, along with, and it also then started to integrate with Chinese culture, because no culture receives a foreign influence in its own term, but also tends to assimilate, break it up into more familiar ideas as to kind of help localize its presence, right, and increase its more acceptance. So, Buddhism also then, kind of sort of mixed and matched with the Taoism and Confucianism, which were the local, schools of religious thoughts. So monasteries became important and central to learning and growth of religious knowledge. Likewise, the state patronage in Sui and Tang dynasty also continued to increase. And one of the very important Chinese figure that we all understand in South Asia is Zhang, and he was, he arrived in India and in ancient Pakistan in sixth century CE, and he brought back a lot of these, Buddhist texts, and then spent a lifetime in translating them into Chinese. So his journey is very kind of iconic, and actually then hundreds of other Buddhists also traveled back and forth. So, and then the Song dynasty also contributed to the growth of Buddhism within Chinese culture. And then all of that then started to also influence in the art, architecture, and philosophy in China. So Chinese, sort of this Buddhism, which was kind of imported from Gandhara, also then became more like a syncretic form of Buddhism. So there were then different school of thought began to emerge, right? And the Ming dynasty and the Qing dynasty, there are all these dynasties actually then kind of made Buddhism in many ways as a central part of the Chinese philosophy, and then also then supported it. And it and they also then have a high regard for this Tibetan Buddhism that Pakistan has a role there as well. So in terms of this religious and philosophical orientation of Chinese Buddhism, Gandhara had a major part. So that is like a that is like a bonding, the point of bonding between the two ancient civilizations. Likewise, you would also understand that Pakistan's Buddhist heritage is also, sort of wide and deep. It has a deep historical depth, right? And for those who are not familiar with the region of Gandhara is not a geographical region today. It is like a historical region whose now borders are divided into different countries, if you like. So, in a way, Southwest China and Eastern Afghanistan and whole of Pakistan, I would say, kind of falls into what scholars have now called the Greater Gandhara, right? Within this greater Gandhara, it's like a greater Gandhara is like a sphere of influence, if you like, right? And the leading cities in Pakistan today were Peshawar and then Charsada and then Texala, right? So these cities were the epicenter of this Gandhara art, philosophy, architecture, literature, religion, and so on and so forth. So, and it also, as I said before, it was situated on the crossroad of the Silk Route. It was on the intersection of the Silk Route, and thereby it actually this entire Gandhara civilization and Gandhara culture grew, being on the crossroad of cultures. And there were this Indian and Central Asian and Iranian and Greek and Roman. All these influences converge. So there emerged some kind of religious syncretism and cross-cultural fermentation. Now, if you kind of want to name the dynasties which were greatest advocate of Buddhism in Gandhara, one has to begin with Ashoka. Now, Ashoka, as we all understand, was a grandson of Chandragupta Maurya, who had his primary education in Takshashila University, right? And there he learned the art of administration, if you like, and also the military warfare under the greatest teacher of Texla University that we called Kotilia Chankya. Now, Chankya was the one who was the mentor of the grandfather of Ashoka, and he was the one who helped lay the foundation of the Mauryan Empire. Right. So I think this Gandhara region has so many characters who have played a critical role in shaping Indian history, that it really kind of really makes you admire this heritage even more, right? And then from uh, Ashokan legacy is still celebrated uh, through his rock edicts. He was the first emperor to use these large boulders for writing and for public pronouncement, outlining the important message of Buddhism for the wider masses, because these edicts were actually read out to the public and they were ceremonially celebrated. And he's also the one who is responsible for sending Buddhist monk to Sri Lanka and Central Asia, and and also then had so many credits, right? That really is a celebrated figure for the Buddhists around the world, right? and Ashoka was attributed to Ashoka, and so is Buddhist that actually played a major role in spreading, in extending patronage to Buddhism was the Kushan dynasty, and one of the greatest Kushan king was Kanishka. So Kanishka also laid the foundation of the of the third city of Texela and so on. Likewise, Menander, who probably was a Buddhist himself, was a major patron of Buddhism. He was an Indo-Greek ruler, and uh, and all these Pali and Chinese literary tradition mention him with great respect, and probably there are some dialogues which are also then expounding the Buddhist philosophy. Now, apart from this historical sort of introduction to Gandhara, I must also tell you that to an extent, there are, stories of the previous lives of the Buddha that Buddha himself has told for preaching purposes, and they are called Jataka tales. Now, these Jataka tales were, had these many stories about Texla and about Gandhara, where Buddha as a bodhisattva, the Buddha to be, uh, in some story he was a king of the son of the king of Gandhara, right? And in another story, he was a prince who would become king of Texela. And and then there are these numerous references of these various figures of bodhisattvas studying in Texla University, and so on and so forth. So these Jataka stories are to understand the Buddhist message. So all Buddhists that I have met invariably, from knew Texila instantly, because that was a word that they had heard when they were children. And when they were children. And we all know that this is it poses a very deep imprint on your memory. So what we're saying is that it is very, very easy for Pakistan to have in Gandhara. And then, you think of these reverend Buddhist monks from Gandhara, especially Asanga and Vashu Bandhu. They were two who are credited as texts which were translated by Chinese, right? Talk about and think about this Korean monk, this Haicho, I think he was either Chinese monk who actually then traveled to India and arrived in Gandhara, and then he's the one who actually, kind of played a major role in spreading Buddhism in Korea. And you would also know that, Buddhism spread from China to Korea and then to Japan, right? And they all, I must tell you that there are two major schools of Buddhism. One is Mahayana Buddhism, and then is Theravada Buddhism. uh, you know, uh, uh, Japan, Korea, China are part of this Mahayana Buddhism, right? Whereas this other school actually hold its sway in India and Sri Lanka, and then probably Nepal, and then rest of these Southeast Asian countries, right? So they are Theravada Buddhists, right? So so this is again, and Mahayana Buddhism originated from Gandhara. It is credited to Gandhara. So Gandhara has a great significance for these countries, and you must also understand that one of the founders of Tibetan Buddhism, that is very close to Chinese, right, is a greatest figure called Padmasambhava. Now, Padmasambhava is called the second Buddha and also the reincarnation of Buddha in 8th century, and also called the Guru Rinpoche. Now, he is the one who had he was from Savat Valley, and he was the one who abdicated his throne and went to Tibet to introduce Buddhism. So again, within this Gandhara, greater Gandhara, Savat Valley is also something which is very sacred to Chinese, because it is the birthplace of Tibetan Buddhism, right? And 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 so on and so forth. Now, I will now, quickly try and explain this, kind of a resurgence of interest in Buddhism in China. For instance, if the Chairman Mao had actually considered, uh, you know, uh, religion, all religion, including Buddhism and Confucianism, right, as remnants of feudal past, right, and hence not to be encouraged. Whereas the current Chinese premier, it is to his credit, the Xi Jinping, is the one who actually, is responsible partly for this major shift, though it has already been taking place within the Communist Party of China, this, the change of heart about religion. But he is the one who actually fairly and squarely advocated, recognize religion, especially Buddhism and Confucianism, not Islam and Christianity for that matter, but these two religions as a major diplomatic force. So he's the one who actually then, laid the foundation, this strong foundation, or in using Buddhism as a cultural diplomacy, in actually making up, let's say, with the India, which has always opposed China. You'll be surprised to know that when Indian Premier Modi visited China, Chinese Premier took him to a very famous temple, White Horse Temple, where it is said that this was the point from where the Buddhism entered China, and they have a very glorious temple there. And likewise, when the Chinese premier visited India at some anniversary of India-China diplomatic relations, he was also then escorted to Bodh Gaya and to shown the places of prominence in Buddhist heritage. And it is also said that Xi Jinping is also somebody who has who holds kind of some affiliation with Buddhism, his wife, and so on. So apart from the personal reason, it's a public sort of a policy that has been advocated by China, which has actually then really oblige us, being the closest partner and all weather friends. We probably will be foolish not to take advantage of these opportunities which China has already exploited. China, if you think of China on that account, China has the world largest Buddhist population, the largest in the world, maybe 200 to 300 million. China is the number one in inbound Buddhist tourism. The world from, they are attracting Buddhists from around the world to visit China, right? And number three, China is the top spender on outbound tourism. You know, the highest spender as tourists are in today's world are Chinese. So, with such a uh, source of kind of revenues at your doorstep, it probably will be very short-sighted for us not to have tapped into it, as soon as we can, right? Now, for instance, as you know, that China has established these Confucius institutes, also respond like these as a counterpart to British Council and American Center, where they are teaching Mandarin, Chinese language, culture, and like some kind of cultural advocate of China in foreign countries, right? And then these China is also then actually leading all these major organizations in the Buddhist world, like World Buddhist Forum and World Fellowship of Buddhists, right? It is sponsoring these major international conferences. The first, as I said, ever Buddhist sort of a forum that was held in China was in 2006, and then 2009, and so on and so forth. There are like 1,000 Buddhist monks from 37 countries who are visiting, and sadly, there's none from Pakistan. And I will come to that. Why? Right? And then, they are also joining in this Pan-Asian initiatives to revive Nalanda University, right? And also, not only Nalanda University, they are also investing 30 billion US dollars in building Lumbini, the birthplace of Buddha in Nepal, right? So what we are saying is that they are they are contributing in a big way in this cultural sphere, which would obviously kind of lead to tourism, because having developed themselves as an economic and a military power, right? They also want to kind of flex their muscle in the cultural field. So they, as you must have realized, they are partnering with Hollywood in making films. They are also, acquiring so much of this, European Enlightenment heritage in terms of museum and exhibits and experts and so on. So they are building up their universities in a big way. So China is actually trying to kind of develop its soft power. And it is in a ideal position to do so because they have the money. If I'm not wrong, think about, the per capita income of Pakistan was higher than China in 1970s. And now probably today it is like $1,300 for Pakistan and maybe 36 or something $100 for Chinese. So Chinese, and even they say that maybe one Chinese tourist spends on the average $1,000, right? So so that is where I will kind of conclude my talk towards, okay, what could we do to actually then get on with on this major bandwagon, right? And so going back to China's promotion of Buddhist diplomacy, they are using their exhibitions, they're holding exhibitions and events in China, and they are sending out their musical experts to various countries. For instance, there was China. Can you imagine something comparably happening in Pakistan? China sent 160-member Buddhist orchestra group to India in April 2010 to celebrate the 60th anniversary of Indo-China diplomatic ties. So I think our resources, our institutional arrangements, our vision is not really at par with China. So they could probably see us as potential partners in Buddhist diplomacy. So I think we have to, kind of stand up on our 2 feet before China can lift us up a bit more. So it is our, you know lacking that is actually stopping us from taking advantage of these huge phenomenal opportunities. Just to give you an idea of China, when talking about India, what is the target of India? India, obviously, Buddha was born in India, and Buddha died in India, right? Cremated in India. and Buddha born in Nepal, but obviously kind of preached in India and then died in India, and had these all these very very important sites associated with Buddha in India, right? Despite that, at the moment, we'll talk about it in a bit. That only you know the only 11, it's a 11th, the source of tourism, as far as China is concerned. uh, India has only the 11th, good level from where the Chinese do, the largest markets are elsewhere. The largest foreign tourists to China, to India are coming from elsewhere. And only at the 11th position stands China. And what India wants, India is only trying to tap into 1% of Chinese tourists, not just Chinese Buddhist tourists, it's Chinese tourists in general. They just want to tap into 1%. And you will not, just imagine the scale of the Chinese market, right, of tourism, that it is phenomenal, because China has the greatest advantage of these huge numbers. And since middle class are actually build up their prosperous you know lifestyles, they have become really upwardly mobile, they can spend a lot of money. And only a fraction of Chinese tourists tapping into or walking into Pakistan will actually change a lot in this country. Right now, I'll just briefly talk about. I've already said few things about faith diplomacy in Pakistan. We must realize one very important thing, that before 1971, Pakistan, you will be surprised to know, has the largest Buddhist population that lived in Pakistan, not in India. And that why? Because the Chakma tribe in East Pakistan was all Buddhist, and they were probably close to million now. So they were the ones who were actually then added this particular Buddhist face to Pakistan. And Pakistani state was also very very receptive in its initial decades to its Buddhist heritage. And there was a very important figure, the Raja of Chakma tribe, Raja Tridev Roy, who actually chose to chose to leave East Pakistan and joined West Pakistan and made it its home. And he was taken in as a minister, as a Buddhist minister in Bhutto's cabinet, and later on he became ambassador at large during the Zia regime. So he was really a very renowned Buddhist face of Pakistan. And since his demise in 2012, we have lost the champion of Buddhism in the country, right? And in that period, in the early decades, Pakistan also then sent its Gandhara collection to countries across the world, and it is also now, it continues to follow that route. But it is not doing it at an optimal level. It is still, kind of is struggling in many ways. Now, as I as said, this particular infrastructural investment, right? This CPAC that we see, the good news about CPAC is that despite all the bad press that we have about CPAC, it has actually achieved almost 50% of its targets. There are these billions of rupees have been spent on developing our road networks, and then these energy sector projects have completed, and there's a whole lot of this sort of coordination. There were hundreds of these visits that has taken place. So despite the bad press, the wheel of CPAC moves on. Yes, it is not actually kind of really achieve its full potential, because CPEC also had these short-term and long-term plans, right? So they will definitely, we will, inshallah, get there. So what we are saying is that CPEC is also in Chinese mind another it's like a 21st century Silk Road, right? And it also, as Silk Road had brought these countries like Pakistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, things like Iran, and so on. So for all these, and not to forget the other country, but these were the neighbors who were brought together through the Silk Route trade. And so, likewise, this Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, is also a similar, seen in a similar light. So we need to actually then draw on this, historical connections to our contemporary advantage. Now, tourism figures prominently in the CPAC. It is, in fact, one of the seven pillars of CPAC after this connectivity, energy, industries, agriculture, and financial cooperation. Tourism is important. And 2023 was a year of Pakistan-China Year of Tourism. But but sadly, despite all of this, we have not achieved, through CPAC or through our own financial resources, funding from World Bank, IMF, whatever we do to run our country, to actually give this whole thing a real boost. Until and unless we really, kind of flash it across the world headlines, I do not think we will go do very well with these baby steps that we are taking. We really need to kind of do it with a splash in a very big way, right? Not in a gentle stroke, but really push it hard. Because I think, whatever I have seen over the past decade, honestly, everything is, it's as it says that, it is an idea whose time has come, right? And if we do not use it, I think time might change. China might start thinking something else, right? So there is a, very, very important opportunity that we should not miss, right? And as I said about the Chinese market, it is huge, but sadly, Pakistan is not among the top 10 Chinese tourist destinations. It is Chinese travelers go to Hong Kong, to Macau, to Japan, to Thailand, to France, to South Korea, Australia, and so on. But they do not come to Pakistan. And we have to see why it is happening. In the recent years, as I said, this, love for Buddhism is actually, and this drive toward tourism is very recent in China, right? So there are countries like Thailand which are immensely benefiting from this Chinese tourism, and there's a, sort of a hundredfold increase. There are like, in some places there are like many hundredfold increase in Chinese tourism, in Singapore, in Malaysia, in Cambodia, and so on. So, and likewise in South Asia, Nepal is immensely benefiting from Chinese tourism. Now, uh, you know, I must also just, very, very quickly tell you that what we need to do. We need to, for instance, build a master plan exclusive for the Chinese. What I'm advocating here in this talk is that if we have a one big client, we do not have to look further. Others will come without our asking. If we are able to, attract Chinese market, then I think Thailand and Sri Lanka and India and Nepal and Cambodia or whatever, Japan and Korea, they will all follow. As I say, you know what I'm saying? So it is that, kind of elephant in town, which everybody will be tempted to see, right? So we need to have a really major tourism master plan, right? And we need to identify places, and then we have to create a entire sort of assembly line, monastic center, monastic zones within the country near the heritage sites, right? And and one of the lackings in my experience is this very kind of colonial mindset that we're still carrying on, this colonial policy against, you know, a rehabilitation of the sites as functional spaces. I really believe that if we keep our Buddhist sites in as archaeological ruin, yes, it's good for the archaeologists, maybe it is good for the art historian, but it is not good for pilgrimage, right? We cannot ensure Buddhist tourism if we do not give the Buddhist the space and the comfort to actually hold their rituals. Look what India has done. India is a shining example for Pakistan to follow. India has a lot of limitation, you know but Pakistan can actually develop its heritage in ways that India cannot, because Pakistan, if you think of just China, Pakistan is a geographical neighborhood. And I'll tell you that where we should start, take advantage of our, neighborhood, right? So, I mean, the only, there's no functional spaces. There are no, living temples where there are Buddhists, right? And there's no, within the country, we do not have much understanding of this immense potential for cultural diplomacy, public diplomacy, tourism, uh, based on Gandhara, right? Now, a series of publications, including, we do not have, any major publication, we do not have films, we do not have brochures, we do not have, any other ways of actually making sure that our people know what they have. Now, Pakistan need to work on a lot. We need to ease up visa restrictions, which are still, I think, which are being done. I think Pakistan need to have these, sort of flights, contacts, and so on. So, Pakistan was, Pakistan, I would, try to conclude in a bit that, Pakistan should actually seek Chinese help in how to actually dovetail its priorities within the CPAC. What we want out of CPAC, it's not just energy and road connectivity. We also need something else, right? So, for instance, what we need to do is there's a tiny Buddhist population, Buddhist in Pakistan, who can be trained. Why Pakistan is not able to participate in this World Buddhist Forum? Because you have to be a Buddhist and a monk to participate. Why can't we help our help? Can you excuse me? There's somebody at the door for a second, please.
Oh,
Can you?
of course, please go ahead. You can just mute.
What I'm saying is that within the CPAC, we can always, insert these projects which are crucial for us to promote Buddhist tourism and cultural diplomacy based on that within the CPAC. We can always insert that. We can always negotiate that. So from Buddhist circuit to developing these indigenous Buddhist and so on, and Gandhara circuit. So I think there's a whole lot that we can do. And finally, that's my last point. Where we should start. Pakistan has never given prominence to or never played on its geographical advantage. While we are trying to tap, Buddhist tourists from China, where the Buddhists should enter, these Chinese Buddhist or tourists should enter Pakistan, not from Islamabad or Lahore or Karachi, to Gilgit. We need to build up Gilgit-Baltistan. That is the border area for southwestern China. That is actually the whole intent of this CPEC is actually to be able to build southwestern China and bring it at par with the rest of China, right? And they are right across the Khunjerab Pass. So Khunjerab Pass is a dead, pass, and there's a Chinese who lives in southwestern China, if they have to apply for a visa, where would you go? They will cross half the country to go to maybe Beijing or wherever in China we have our diplomatic missions. So what we are saying is that if we create a fraction of ease for China. China is a trusted friend. China will not do, it's not a suspect. It's a most friendly country than Pakistan can imagine in today's world, right? It is the so all we need to do is to bring Gilgit-Baltistan at the forefront of this tourism with China and let these Chinese tourists walk into on the KKH, on the Karakoram Highway, walk into Pakistan, drive into Pakistan, and then they will be very happy to, once they are there, they'll be very pleased to visit Islamabad, where they'll be very happy to explore Lahore and Karachi and so on and so forth. But this should be the doorstep, not Islamabad, not Karachi, not Lahore. So I think, I mean, my talk is actually is an invitation for collective thinking, for soul searching. I'm no expert on Gandhara. I'm no expert on Buddhism. I'm no expert on China. What all I'm an anthropologist interested in Pakistan's cultural heritage. And over the years of my fieldwork and interaction with people, sort of across the world who wants to kind of come to Pakistan and especially interested in Buddhist heritage, I think that is some of the points that I have learned that I try to share it with you. And I'll thank you for the opportunity.
Gee, thank you so much, Dr. Umar. That was an extremely enlightening conversation, both because of the historical context and the concrete ideas you gave. I see a few questions in our question box, so I can summarize a few of those, and then I have a few of my own as well.
Yes. Just one thing quickly, Uzair. I'm sorry to interrupt. I did see Dr. Safdar raise his hand, so if he's still available, and he could, yeah. So I'm just going to ask him to speak, allow him to speak so that he can contribute. I think he was raising his hand earlier as well.
Okay, please go ahead, Dr. Safdar, if you're here.
You'll have to unmute yourself, Dr. Safdar.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you now. Please go ahead. Assalamu alaikum, ji.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. First of all, my compliments to Dr. Saab for his very enlightening talk. It is music to my ears because this is the subject of my research and passion. And everything that he talked about was very close to my heart. So I'll just enlighten you about some of the things that we are doing. Maybe it is added information to your knowledge. I am at the Higher Education Commission and I am Director General of CPEC. So one way or the other, I am, let's say, connected with these developments, these things about tourism and about promotion of Chinese culture and connecting Pakistanis and Chinese together. So from your last point of, let's say, starting the tourism right from Gilgit, I'll just give you an example that in 2019, I was in Gilgit. One of the papers presented in the conference said that that year they received a record number of Chinese tourists in Gilgit.
That's true.
So there is a lot of appetite for Chinese tourists, and Chinese tourists are very keen to come. I keep meeting a number of Chinese intellectuals and common people who are interested in knowing more about cultural heritage of Pakistan. For the last 2 years, I've been a part of that, you could say, team. We organized 2 international conferences at the Qaid-e-Azam University, in which a large number of Buddhists from all over, even from Far East, they participated last year and this year. Then a Buddhist center is being developed within the Department of Archaeology and Center of Asian Civilizations in the Qaid-e-Azam University. And it is being sponsored by an institution, most probably in Cambodia. And that's an international institution of a female monastery over there. Now, apart from this, we have a consortium of Pakistani and Chinese universities. It is called CPEC Consortium of Universities. And in that, on the Pakistani side, we have established 6 China study centers. And these Chinese study centers have, among other things, a mandate to promote Chinese culture and people-to-people contacts between Chinese and Pakistanis. And these centers are publishing books on Chinese culture and Chinese literature and so on. I know of Chinese interest in that. I have published a book titled Buddhist Heritage of Pakistan. And it has a demand in China. I was asked by our ambassador there to translate it into Chinese. I said, I don't know anybody, but we are making an effort to write a very China-specific book and translate it into Chinese. Then,
Fair enough, sir.
Okay, that's excellent, Dr. Shah. Thank you so much. Those are very encouraging steps. And I think that covers some of the concerns, at least, or has it started covering some of the concerns that Dr. Umar mentioned?
That's it. So the efforts are being made in this direction.
Yes, sir. Dr. Safdar Saab, I'm grateful for your response and adding to our knowledge the achievements of Pakistani academia in promoting Buddhist heritage. And yes, I'm familiar. I have been part of this Gandhara symposium, initiated this idea, which was then picked up by various institutes, and also then motivated Ministry of Foreign Affairs to celebrate Vesak days, and also then contributed to the Textile Institute of Asian Civilization. I just want to enter a caveat here. The entire attention to Pakistan's Buddhist heritage from the lens of archaeology and, let's say, art history, right? But it is not through the lens of Buddhists. For instance, in India or in China, let's take China for example. China, they exactly know that which particular monastery was founded by which monk, when, what books he published, which school of thought he belonged to, who were the students, what did they learn. Now, the corresponding knowledge about Buddhist heritage of Pakistan is not there. What we have is a chronology. They were established in 200 BC by patronage broadly under Kanishka, and the art form, Hellenistic art form, right? And so on and so forth. We have this archaeological data. We have this art historical data. We do not have theological information, right? So I think as a result of that, and added to our national policy that I mentioned of conservation over rehabilitation, we do not have these functional sites. We have archaeological ruins, not Buddhist temples. If you look at India, They at Bodh Gaya, which is a World Heritage Site, they hold the massive congregations. They adorn the entire, stupa with flowers. That is what really animates them. In other words, if we do not turn them into mazars, as we understand as Muslims, into shrines, I can assure you that this will stay as a drop in the ocean as it is now. Comparable to the task at hand, the corresponding approach and the efforts are really baby steps. I'm not denying those baby steps. I have been contributing and supportive and very, kind of receptive to baby steps. But the point is, if your child continues to take baby steps and not take these giant leaps, how far you can go? Time is running out.
Excellent point, Dr. Umar. I mean, it is baby steps, but we do expect it to grow. I think one thing that you may be familiar with, which I'd like your input on, is that Pakistan has had, by some accounts, a reasonable success in tapping into tourism of the Sikhs through sites in mainly the Punjab, whether it's the Kartarpur or Nankana Sahib and so on and so forth. Is that a good, and those are more or less, I suppose, functional sites. Is that a good blueprint or model that we could use to cut and paste into this site? And would that be doable?
Yes, of course. I think the reason that Kartarpura did not take off in the way it should have been because of the, you know, uh, because of the Indian non-cooperation on that, right? And but of course, it is a step in the right direction. And we have said it time and again that by opening Kartarpura, you are actually engaging in cultural diplomacy with one country and one community. But if you open doors to the Buddhist diplomacy, you are inviting the whole world. There is a European Union of Buddhists that I'm part of, and they know nothing about Buddhist heritage of Pakistan. Wherever I have, sort of conversed with or given talks to, sort of these scholars of Buddhism, around the world, even in American university, there are experts on Buddhism who who know India and the like the back of their hand. They are very much familiar through books and exhibitions and catalogs about the Buddhist heritage. They have not been to Pakistan even once. They do not feel the need to come to Pakistan. So I'm saying that there are these handful of exchanging, there are this handful of these archaeology-driven academic institutions. Let me say this. I firmly believe that if we do not have literature being written about Buddhist past of the country, if we do not have novels, if we do not have short stories, if we do not have films, if we do not tap into music, if we do not tap into the creative, the fine arts, the Gandhara sculpture, and no corresponding contemporary school of architecture. I mean, I have been at NC all my life, and I know for a sure that in art history, for the artist, we just have like few lectures on Gandhara art, and that is all. And then we move on to the west and the east and wherever. So, if within the artist sort of a consciousness, Gandhara art only surfaces as a marginal figure. So, what I'm saying is that if we really want to replicate what China has done, we learn from China, we learn from India, right? And finally, I would also say that if we want to kind of fight our fights with the world, you go ahead and do it. I was looking at the soft power index of Pakistan and the hard power index of Pakistan. The hard power index of Pakistan stand at the seventh position in terms of its military muscle. And if you look at the soft power index of Pakistan, we stand at the 84th position. Just think about these, these odds and think where we headed. If we want to come across as a military muscle, be my guest, do it. But don't even fool yourself by saying that you want to promote tourism or Buddhist tourism, or you are engaged in cultural diplomacy with the world. You are not. And I'm not saying all of this because of my academic. I have a very active coordination with all the agencies and the institutions in Pakistan. I know it as a matter of personal observation. It is my heartbeat. It is not jagbeeti. I have not read it. I've experienced it. I've worked on it. We have established a Gandhara Resource Center in Texla. For the 5 solid years I worked and lived in Texla, interacting with the departments, with the academia, with the agencies, with everybody, with the foreign Buddhists who were coming to Texla. So it is not just my, lay opinion. I can say it, I can bet my life on it.
Gee, thank you so much. I think that's exactly right. There are some questions. We are way over time already, but I can summarize the gist of some of them. I think one concern is there also sufficient will from you've spoken about how there isn't enough will from the Pakistani government. So the question was why, and is there also a lack of will from the Chinese government, because they could, as we said, if we need to, as you said, if we need to negotiate with the Chinese to make this a priority, it suggests that maybe there isn't enough will on their side yet either, and also because they're more encouraged in tourism there, or is that because of us? And then the second factor, which often is prominent in Pakistan, is of course the local community discontent. Would there be any benefits from this tourism to local communities such that they would be supportive if you had these kinds of running temples rather than feeling some kind of animosity toward them and so forth?
Uh, I will address this last question first. I mean, local communities. In my personal experience, whenever I have engaged in a conversation with a very devout Muslim, a few minutes down the conversation, they would say that, who knows, Buddha could have been uh, a prophet of Allah, because we have so many prophets who are not named, right? So, and if you look at Buddha's message, it resonates so closely with the Islamic values and Islamic messages. And there's a huge, debt that Sufism has acquired from Buddhist monastic, uh, you know, philosophies. All that ascetic philosophies of Sufism draw on Buddhist monastic life. Think about madrasa, right? Think about fasting. Think about not harming, and I mean it's a talk in its own right. The relationship between Islam and Buddhism. What, in my experience, if it were Hinduism, probably idol worship and you are dead. You know, Also Muslims tend to understand that these, as one Buddhist, scholars have put it, who was here in Texla, he said, we do not worship the idol of Buddha. We worship the ideals of Buddha. And the figure of Buddha is not for idol worship. It is like your ancestral, sort of a figure's portrait that you have placed to just remember him, right? And likewise, think of that these were all narrative art. These, in those days, these visual sort of devices, these were used to tell the story of the life of Buddha, rather than kind of encouraging any worship, idol worship, because Buddha always said that he's not God, he's a man. And he always said that you do not have to follow me, you follow my message. So I think this particular animosity that we fear is unfounded. It does not exist. From my, as I said, personal work at Texla, in our group, when we hold these Visak celebration that we held since 2019, every year, we had this load of these Muslim clerics who were part of our congregations, and they did not hate it. Secondly, imagine Buddhist tourists coming from China spending $1,000. Who would be benefited? Traders will be benefited, shopkeepers will be benefited, transporters will be benefited, restaurant owners will be benefited, hotels will be benefited, and so on and so forth. So I think when the penny will drop, people will listen, and people have a craving for it. I mean, when you travel to northwestern Pakistan, go to Gilgit, go to Texla, these people are really looking for these hordes of those visitors that they used to have in the 70s. It is all that Ahman war that really blocked all those paths, and actually then turned this whole region of Gandhara into a war zone, right? Who would have in their sane mind would come to Gandhara or think of Gandhara in the 80s? But now things are looking up. We have peace. Now border disputes are being settled. There is like there are if and buts in all of this, but the point remains that if we have a concerted policy at the highest level, honest to God, you forget industrialization that you cannot compete with the world. But I can assure you that your country can rise on this wave of Buddhist tourism which has just kicked in. Mind you, all these countries before their independence, even like Thailand or Sri Lanka or whatever, Buddhism were discouraged in their countries because they were most of these European colonialists discouraged Buddhism. Now they have become state religion. They have resources. These countries have become wealthy, and they want to visit Pakistan. But Pakistan, as they say in Urdu, के बाज गुल ही ना जाने बाज तो सारा जाने है. Every Buddhist is familiar with Chakshila. They've learned it in their kind of childhood. And tragically, we don't know how we can actually, kind of commercially exploit. So I think we need a very, very, major rethinking in terms of policies, in our practices, institutional mechanisms, and then just, you know, draw on to China, just motivate China, just to try and find a, insert it within CPEC, and then the whole world will follow. So we do not have,
Okay.
and have to wait
I
for
think
any
it's a
other.
very persuasive case you make. If I think it would be wise to just focus almost exclusively our tourist energy on this specific demographic, because I agree with you completely. Not only would other people follow Japan and Korea and so on and so forth, but some of the figures that you're mentioning, just from my own knowledge, people like Ashoka and so on and so forth, are not only does it has Buddhism influence Sufism, but also pre-Islamic Iranian culture. Even I think even in Zoroastrianism and a lot of the kings in the Persian Empire of old, these were, and the Vastas and so on and so forth, were critical texts, and these were critical figures that a lot of the first monotheism, Zoroastrianism, came out of also. So I think if it just the places as you're explaining them, and I'm sure you're right, are so central, just not just to Buddhist civilization, but to world civilization, that we do potentially have. I think just as a matter of principle and morality, you should take care of them, but also as a matter of economics. So I think that's very well put. I want to thank you.
Do we have time to ask a last question from the Facebook? Somebody's asked us a question, or should I just forward that link to Dr. Nadeem and he can respond there later if we're short? Naturally, because I know we're short on time. So just checking with you.
Yeah, I think we're about a half hour over time.
Yeah.
We can.
Sure, then I'll just
If
send
you'd be
over
open to that, maybe.
Dr. Nadeem, I'll send over that comment to you, and if you can take out the time and respond. Somebody's asked a question
Sure.
on Facebook because we were running this as a live stream on Facebook as well.
Fair enough. I'll be happy to, answer any question that audience or the listener may have, and also would really request all of you to actually think about it in a robust manner. Shake up this uh, kind of a hazy sort of vision, and clarify your thoughts and really focus it. I really, really want more and more people to actually join this voice and articulate it and interpret it in their own terms. So it's a vast heritage, not just archaeology or art history. It has to be taken up by a variety of disciplines and variety, and seen through variety of lens. So thank you again for this
Absolutely.
opportunity. And if there's anything else that follows from this discussion, I'll be very, very happy to contribute to that in terms of research, investigation, whatever.
Thank you so much. And again, we want to thank our mutual friend, Dr. Hassan Bashir, for putting us in touch. And of course, Dr. Sikandar, the director of the center, for giving the law school this opportunity to connect as well. I think this was a fascinating talk. And it's not something that we have actually, like as this, at the school level or at the university level, focused on enough, even though a lot of us have been asked for ideas on tourism and so on and so forth from the government. So I think you're an extremely valuable resource and eloquent voice for what seems like from this discussion to be the best way forward. Um, so again, I want to thank you on behalf of the law school and the center, and hopefully you'll have some questions from some of the audience, and we will be in
Yes.
touch soon, shortly also.
Oh, right. Thank you very much again, and good night, all of you.
Gee, thank you.
All
Take
right.
care.
Bye.
Khudafiz, and thank you to the audience for joining.
Bye.
Bye.